and here come. And this, you'll see these slides are just really a basic way for us to kind of cover the kind of information because there's so much to learn about us and keep us on track. But I will say this, we're a nice small group and folks know each other, have gotten to know each other a little bit. So let me just make sure I'm on the right slide. Here we go. And yeah, so feel free to jump in if you have a question that's just burning to understand something I'm talking about, and we'll also leave some time at the end. So what I really want to focus on for you is kind of what this community is all about, who we are, what we're trying to build, and then we'll talk a little bit at the end about just the process and kind of where we are in the process of getting our community together. So I like to say we're not a very ideological community. Like you see somebody mentioned a religious bent to some communities. Some have are more eco villages that are kind of actively farming or doing something very purposeful along that way. And we're really people who want to live in community and commit to being in a community with others and having some shared amenities and shared care and a lot of the things that you all have been speaking about tonight, the connection, are just things we believe are good for us, good ways to live. And we run the spectrum from people who are, really have spent much of our lives, like you heard, looking for some kind of community like this, and some who've only recently come to it. So, but we're all committed to being actively committed to each other and having a good community to live in. And we also believe in being good neighbors in the larger community. So once in a while, we have somebody attend an info session who will ask, for example, should it be gated, a gated community or fenced off? And while we expect to have a perimeter fence, and you'll see the property and the layout tonight, um, we would rather be kind of the opposite, really, more open. In fact, our original founders envisioned that we might even have a nonprofit coffee shop, something like that, in our common house to promote interaction with the neighbors and to have something social that we could offer to our community. And that did fall out of the design plans, but the structure is still there. And I think the intent behind it to be participatory in our neighborhood is something that we do believe in. And then our other values, things that we've discussed and as a group have come to agree on, diversity of all types, family composition, sexual orientation, race, and age. While we have a lot of folks who are kind of retirement age or around that age, we really want intergenerational living, and we're hoping we build toward that. The vocation, many folks have mentioned tonight. I was a person who I've been in Denver for 30 years and become increasingly closer to downtown and the center and really love all the amenities. And I have had those thoughts, like some of you mentioned too, about maybe in my, next chapter, I want to move somewhere more rural and exciting, more the problems I've had with that are the lack of amenities in a city, having medical conditions, and I've seen family members and others who've struggled with being in a remote location. So what grabs me, and I think a lot of us about Blue Columbine, is the convenience to the city, its location, and its convenience to the mountains as well. It's really got direct access to nature. If you're familiar with the area, Prospect Park is virtually across the street from our land, and it is 39 acres of lovely parks, and there are trailheads, and so that's that kind of natural access, biking paths and hiking on a creek, the creek running through. Those are things that are really important to us as a community, having access to nature and being active in our outdoors. Sustainability is something we care about, and the design process will show you a few things in our community that have been deliberately designed to so we can achieve as close to net zero in our carbon emissions as possible. We'll be solar powered. We've had some folks contribute to the design who know about commercial energy development and sustainable energy, and so that's been helpful. And yes, our community is planned to have enough solar power generated that we will probably get pretty close to net zero if we don't reach that entirely, and essentially generate enough electricity for our community. So that's our goal, is to get as close as possible. And then we also, I like to say, we like to live the good life, and we have lots of rich amenities in this neighborhood, in this community that we want to build. There are different approaches to how people want to live in community, and we were really, I think, have an excellent advisor team. I'll be sharing you a little bit about them. Our folks are architects and are very experienced with co-housing, and they've really taught us a lot about what kinds of amenities and what even your layout and design, how it can encourage and facilitate community. So I think Joel said you're almost forced to interact, and we have had some introverts who've come and said, "Wait a minute, am I going to be like, really encountering folks in my face all day?" It's not that that overpowering a community, but it is designed with the intention to make communing easy and a natural part of your everyday experience. So as we go through and show you kind of the layout and the reasons behind the design, you'll see that every decision really has been made to make community and promoting interaction just a natural, easy part of our environment and our daily living, without making an effort. Hopefully, you feel that sense of community with the way that we've structured things. Um, and we do believe in making our decisions together and valuing our relationships with each other as much as we value making the decision itself. So we strive for consensus. I would say our membership group so far has been pretty good at discussing our thoughts and coming to agreements that we all can feel good about, even if it wasn't originally our idea. One shorthand way I like to think about this is going into a decision-making process with your not thinking of it as a transactional process like we often do, but as an investment in our community and caring that about how that process promotes our relationship and strengthens them. Hi, I see Carol's joining us. Thank you. Welcome. We're just getting started, so you haven't missed too much yet. And we'll stop for a little while and get some introductions. But that is part of our group, self-governance, running our community in a way that different than, say, an HOA. Many of you have mentioned you've been part of, and legally will be kind of the real estate model, the how Colorado will regard Blue Columbine as a condominium kind of co-housing community or an HOA type of operation. In those kinds of operations, typically there's voting and there are shares based on property ownership and the decision making. I'll say, as somebody who lived for 16 years in a condo community with people who I didn't know any better than you folks who have mentioned living in a cul-de-sac or in a different on a block in your neighborhood. There were people who I affirmatively did not want to socialize with, actually, in this community, I would say. And we still managed to get our business done and make decisions together. But it wasn't with that intent in mind, like we're shaping at Blue Columbine, where what we value is not just the specific decision under discussion, but our long-term relationships and the health of our community. So you mentioned, Monica, facilitation skills and how important those are to communal decision making. We are just beginning to embark on some real work together to develop more guidelines for our community, to flesh out kind of these values and some statements about how we see ourselves operating, and to begin learning how to have productive discussions and meetings, and how to prevent and resolve conflict when it does come up. So we're beginning some of that work actually later this month, and we'll be building our own skills at being good community members. But it is something, again, that's the main thing I think driving us is really this desire to live in community with each other, where people do know their neighbors and do exchange skills and hang out and socialize and maybe give each other rides to the airport or something, that you used to think of what neighbors are for, right? And I think some of that is degraded in our public life. So I mentioned the design is really purposeful, and the members have worked with our expert team to get us to the point where we are now, which is where virtually all of the property has been planned. The units that are available for sale now have been the floor plans are developed for each one of those units. We have the common areas planned. And we got actually city approval on that plan. So we're now in the next phase, and we'll talk some more about that process momentarily, but we really are in a good place with what we've built so far. The location I mentioned is a big part of our personality, I think, growing our growing community sense is really that western area, close to the city, still convenient, but with direct access to nature, very close to the foothills. We have lots of good public transportation actually in the area. Within about 3/4 of a mile walk is the light rail station. There is a bus route running down 44th Avenue. Currently, I haven't mentioned this yet, but the city of Wheat Ridge is in the second phase, entering the second phase of a redevelopment plan, revitalization plan is what they actually call it, for this neighborhood we're moving into. And that includes upgrading pedestrian access to public transportation and even rerouting some of the traffic that moves down that 44th Avenue corridor down to 38th Avenue. So that it will become more pedestrian friendly. The city would like to see this area where our land is turn into a more residential developed a community feel. Currently, the area is partly developed for residents, and it also has some agricultural land as well as some industrial kind of plots around there. So it's a zone that's in transition to the kind of residents that we are desiring. And the city is actually I will say this about the process of them approving our land. We needed to get the land rezoned in the process of getting the City Council of Wheat Ridge to approve our building plans. And they unanimously approved the rezoning, and the comments were, I joke when I say this, but it really felt like a little love fest for Blue Columbine. The city really appreciated the thought behind the community, liked the design. There were a few changes they made in the process before it got to the city council approval stage that our architects worked with the city staff to do. The city council even actually thanked the planning staff of the city for bringing this project and said this is the kind of thing we that reflects well on Wheat Ridge and that we would like to attract here. So we know we have a good location. We always felt we did, and then we got that confirmed when City Council saw our plans in August and approved everything. So it's a really nice place to be. The Common House is designed to be the heart of the community, and some of us, I like to say it's not a tiny home community, but some of us are considering downsizing because we have such rich shared amenities. You still have your private unit, but we are going to have a host of amenities in that common house. It's about 4,000 square feet, which is on the larger side for a lot of co-housing communities. And it'll have a chef's kitchen, indoor and outdoor dining, children's play areas, but as deliberately designed with sight lines, like a half wall window walls, so that adults can still monitor children while they're playing in their space. All kinds of things like exercise rooms and a library slash office we might use for remote workers as well. Arts and craft space. And I love the guest suites, so that those of us who do downsize don't necessarily have to maintain a guest room in our home. We'll have a couple of suites in the plan that can be used for probably a nominal cleaning fee, maybe a $20 a night or something we will develop that will be available for our guests to reside in. So again, by kind of maximizing our shared amenities, we really allow ourselves the opportunity to downsize if we'd like to do that. The floor plans are delightful though, and they come in a range of sizes and configurations. And some of us really like some of the larger plans. I've actually entertained the idea. I'm still thinking about potentially buying a larger property and then having a roommate or housemate, and which is another way to bring folks into the community who might not otherwise, be able to. And I've enjoyed that kind of communal living before. So we're really building something that is flexible to where you want to be. I will jump to one thing that is important in our community as well. This conversation has come up even in our introductions about aging and mobility. I'm reading into that. I don't think I'm going to use that word, but I have concerns about that. As I age, will I be a burden to my adult son, or will I be able to live in my home? And what kinds of amenities will I need, or modifications to my home? And our community, when we met last spring with our architect team to design the floor plans, it turned out that one big issue for us was the ability to age in place and to make sure that whatever floor plans, layouts we had would be um, something that was amenable to being modified for example, for the loss of mobility if somebody becomes wheelchair bound. And so all of our plans now, we have actually 2 units that are aside that are wheelchair ready, that will be wheelchair ready the day of move-in. And we've had some folks who are wheelchair bound who've come around and expressed some interest. And then the rest of the units are all built to the next design standard that is just short of wheelchair accessible. So that means if anybody becomes wheelchair bound or needs some modifications to their home for whatever kinds of reasons, that there should be a minimum of modifications needed for the place to become adaptable. So that was really a big value for us, was to make sure that a place are accessible. There are a few units that have stairs. The townhomes that were designed with stairs were changed by the community or altered just enough to make sure there is the infrastructure for anybody who wants to install an elevator in the building. It would already be configured for that with the appropriate space and electrical support needed. I thought that sounded kind of drastic at first, and then I kind of thought, well, that's a kind of brilliant design. And as it turns out, there are ever more accessible options for stair lifts and for in-home elevators. So everything is laid out to be as accessible as possible. As we get to the layouts, you'll see there is still the one home that is a carriage house that is accessible only by stairs. We've now had some members, however, say, well, those homes are built over garages. Maybe I'll buy a garage underneath that home and put in my own elevator if I ever need it, or something along those lines. So just know that that is a common concern we hear, and that it was something shared by our community. And all of our homes will be really designed for aging in place. That's probably the best way I could just say it, is it's a minimum amount of modifications will ever be needed by our folks in those homes. Garages are optional, and some folks are planning on giving up cars, or we expect to park a couple of car shares on the property as well, because it just is that good a location where it may not be as necessary as it would be in some other places. And then actually, it looks like my slide is out of date. We're up to 7 types of units, and that happened. I'll have to update that, Eva, which was one of the things that happened in our design process with the members, was that 7th design became the 2 units that are deliberately set aside with wheelchair accessibility, and then we kind of rejiggered some of the floor plans from there to make sure there were a couple already available in that state. So now what I'm going to do is take you through this fly through. It's also on our website, but this is a good way to get an overview. And this was prepared by our architect team, Caddis Architecture. And what you'll see, they also consulted, by the way, with our landscape architecture. And this is probably a good time for me to say, our team is a really one of the most experienced teams in the nation in co-housing development. And really, they're builders or designers of co-housing communities. Caddis Architecture, Brian Bowen is the chief architect there. He lived in Wild Sage in Boulder, if you're familiar with that community, for 18 years. He was one of the original members and helped design the place, as well as Silver Sage, which is a senior community nearby. These are both Boulder communities. He's worked on dozens, I think by now, co-housing communities around the country. So he's got a very experienced team, and they also have that lived experience of being members of a co-housing community. So their guidance has been really valuable because they know not only what kinds of design decisions enhance community and promote the kinds of vision we have, the lifestyle we envision. But they also they have great familiarity with the cost savings. Like I said, we're not a tiny home community, but the efficiency you get in a co-housing community, they have personal experience with, and they've shared with us so much about how it becomes more affordable to live in a shared environment like this. One of the co-housing kind of communities sayings, Joel has probably seen these on t-shirts like I have at some of the conferences. They walk around sometimes with a shirt that says, why does everybody need their own lawnmower? And it's kind of like the symbol for you just don't when you live in a community, right? You have 40 homes or 39 homes in this community. You have a few lawnmowers that service the whole property. Right there, you've changed what each homeowner now is responsible for, or even Brian, when he moved out a couple of years ago of Wild Sage, shared some of the hard lessons he was learning about how much more efficient it had been to live in co-housing. He was astounded at the cost of his utilities and internet service and things like that because it just becomes at this level of scale and sharing much more affordable in a lot of those daily expenses. For those of us paying gym member fees, for example, the ability to work out in your own gym on site is just one more way you're saving. So they're a very experienced team, and let's jump into what they have designed for us. I'm going to back this up to the very beginning and just point out as we start, we're coming in from above. You can see, I like to point this out. It's hard sometimes for us to envision how much 3.3 acres, what that means, right? There's just that's the plot of land we have is 3.3 acres large. So I like to point out, you can see on the left side here, by the way, this front road is the facing road is 44th Avenue. This is the west side toward the mountains over here and the east side on the right. And this you can see our property extends back the equivalent of about 2.5 blocks in this neighborhood. So I lived, for example, in a condo community that had 24 units on about a quarter of a city block, and it didn't feel cramped or tight or puny in any way. But we have so much more space. The land is really an important part of um, building the house. It will face out to 44th and be on that. And then behind it, everything's kind of geared around, the housing is geared to circle a common courtyard. And we have, again, you see some indoor outdoor space here, barbecue. We fully intend for our community to enjoy socializing and our community meals, both indoor, outdoor. We would like to have a large movie screen come off this patio and have movies on the green. We have envisioned this center courtyard to be the life, kind of the heart of this community, and people have to cross it from their individual homes to get into the common space. And then there are all these little nooks and crannies, somebody reading a paper, and somebody over here, there's a pollinator garden. Over there, there's another square of grass for playing. There will be kids' areas, this indoor, outdoor. This is another outdoor seating area with a fire pit. I'm hoping for sing-alongs myself. I'm just going to pause right here and say that kind of courtyard runs a good length of the property. And as we came through, there were carriage houses and garages on one side, and then we'll come around, you'll see it better from the back. It's kind of an L-shaped building with a common house and a series of flats that are built up 3 floors. Each floor has single level living apartments, kind of. And they face that courtyard. And then partway back, as we're getting back into the property, this is where the townhomes start. And there will be townhomes on 2 sides, through each side of the perimeter here. 2 bedrooms on one side and 3 bedrooms on another. And these will have small private gardens. All of the flats, though, also have some space devoted to private patio. So there's some private outdoor space that comes with every unit. These are the units, the townhomes that have small yards. Oops, apologies for that. And then as we get farther past the housing, this rear of the property is where bike barns, bike sheds, this is the pool house. We have in our design a biofiltered natural pool, which is a would be designed to be filtered with a minimum of chemicals and a beach area. This is another way I like to say we live the good life. We can have the good things when we pull our resources and then really make the most of this property. This rear area is a very large area devoted to being a kind of dog run for the many dog families in our community already and those to come. And you'll see, I just like to point out there are a few, the trees and there are berms that run through here, kind of rolling little mini hills and things. Those are designed to muffle noise that might come from the interstate, which is about a half a mile north. And we have had folks who've raised questions about the traffic noise. It is not more significant than anywhere in the city, where you can usually hear some kind of traffic noise from a boulevard in the background. We even had a member who went and measured the decibels on the property and found it was something like 52, which is a noisy appliance in your home. It is not, you don't hear like rushing freeway noise here, but yet we've made sure this back portion is the portion where people are spending some recreational time, but it's not where the living is. And those berms and trees are designed to filter a little bit of that noise that might come from the freeway. Shared gardens. I think we've got a couple dozen, a space for at least a couple dozen, as well as a gardening shed. That seems to be a popular activity for folks in our community, and we expect that to grow. I guess pun unintended. And then you can see we have, which runs through this property. We're going to come out through the east side now from the rear. We have this ring road that comes around the property. That was required by the city for fire access, but it's also what we need to be able to access the rear of the property for moving day. You see the garages on the left. Garages are on the periphery of the community always, and then the parking is more on the west side. There are parking stalls and some garages as well. And these are the back of the flats that you see. The larger ones here won't be quite cantilevered as far out as they look like in this drawing, but we'll have a little bit of terracing. Same thing, this doesn't show any cantilevering, but there will be a little bit of, the design has changed just a little bit for purposes of expanding light and circulation in these units. But that ring road will also be an area where kids can play and we'll have surfacing and where we can use it to access our properties on grocery day or moving day. So we'll have that road that runs through the community for convenience, but it's kind of goes around and separates the living space from the kind of the bike sheds and the pool and the gardens that are in the back. I like to stop right here. It's almost the end of the video, but I like to point out from this angle because these kinds of spaces, like these shared patios, facing to the north, facing to the east, this part of our, again, kind of rich shared amenities are all these fabulous spaces with nooks and crannies and a patio here and a little seating area there. And it really is meant to be someplace you could spend your time. As we go, you'll see down at the bottom is the exercise room. This top floor with the windows on three sides is our arts and craft space, our arts loft. And then we also have shared suites in this building and, like we said, the library and workroom. So quite a lot of great community space. I forgot to mention the maker shed. Some people call it the wood shop, but I like to think we'll have a 3D printer and maybe some more fun things like that. And maker shed sounds cool. But yeah, we really have decided that this is the kind of place where we want a kind of rich daily experience. And so that's kind of where the video part ended. Now, because we're having this, I'm going to do things a little bit different. I'm going to tell you where we stand and what we're doing, but and part of that includes that we're starting a new process in terms of joining and learning about the community. And I know a lot of folks here said they can't stay the whole time, and some of you don't know a lot about co-housing, so I want to make sure there's time for questions. So just to know about this that's kind of the big introduction to the community, who we are, the design, the purposes, the layout. What we're doing now and where we are in the process is what I want to talk to you about next. And the short version I mentioned already is in August, we went before the city council with our architect team and they did a big presentation and the city approved our space. So now it has been rezoned for this plan that was submitted to them. Our team now in the next 4 to 6 months, I'd say, is working on turning those designs, those architectural plans that were approved, into the what they call an ODP or I'm sorry, an SDP, a specific, it's a more specific design plan that includes all the where the pipes are running and where the electrical goes, and it's the diagramming and renderings and engineering diagrams that folks will need to, builders will need to bid on building our project. So they are turning that now into the actual diagrams. What that allows, we need that for not just the builders, but also to show, for them to be able to bid intelligently on what it will cost us to build. We are working from a budget that was estimated and built for us by Jim Leach, who's one of he's kind of called the godfather of co-housing, if you've heard of him. He retired just in the last couple of years, but he drafted our budget with this timeline that we're on in mind. So we're hoping it's staying true, although there have been construction cost growth, and we know that there will probably be some. From our budget that we're working from, we expect to have about a $25 million project that that a builder needs to come in and we need a general contractor and somebody to hire all the subs. Normally, in a lot of new construction, that role of managing that process is managed by a developer. And most co-housing communities get off the ground by carving out a piece of a development. They're creating a big housing development, and this corner of it is going to be a co-housing. Some of the places that you're familiar with in the local area are like that, like Aria Co-housing and Hearthstone Co-housing in Northwest Denver. They're communities within a larger development. Our grassroots effort, we've decided up until this point, we have not used a developer, we have not hired one, and that gives us a few advantages. It means that this is really a grassroots, volunteer, member-led, future residents doing all the work kind of project up to get us to this point. But it also means that we are saving some money on the costs of these units. That budget and those diagrams that are being used will be used not only for the hiring the builders, but to set the final prices and to also list them for sale to folks who have not yet joined as members. And we have got a realtor who will be specializes in new construction and will be offering those for sale when that process is ready. I think that's probably by this summer. But the other part of figuring out how we move forward in this community um, is not using a developer who would charge something like, typically the way the developer is paid is by raising the prices on those units to cover their profit. And they might front a construction loan of those millions of dollars we need to build the place. But their payment comes when the units are sold. And typically, the price of a home reflects a good 25% markup. Some people say it's closer to 30, but it's a significant markup for developer profit. So by not hiring a developer, we have managed this process ourselves to get to this point and have not incurred all the costs of a professional developer management company. Now, we as a community may decide at some point that we could use some professional services to help us get across the finish line, but we've got here through the members themselves holding these sessions and signing folks up. So, and working with our professional architects and folks. We also have a project manager who knows the state of development and construction in this region and is looking at who would be the builders that would be best suited to our community. So we think by this summer, our architects finish that part of the plan, that we're in a position to move ahead with building, hiring a contractor, and getting that construction loan. The thing that we need to get there are enough members in the community to not only contribute some equity to the loan, which we need to take in, but also to show any lender or builder that this is a serious community moving forward. Our goal set by our advisor team is to get to 29 households out of the 39 units so that we can leverage that for the construction loan and the build to move forward. The other benefit that we get by not having a developer is the design and building process itself. So typically you hire a developer and they decide how best to manage the building of this community and then to price the units from that point on. They may cut some corners to maximize profit, for example, or decide what kinds of materials, whereas we have a much more active role in deciding how this community is going to come to life, and things like sustainable building materials and choices that we make, design choices and building choices, will be ours instead of a developer's. And we can determine where to invest in, where we want to invest in certain materials or others, or certain design choices or building choices compared to others. So it really becomes ours from the beginning. And if we decide to change that, we will make that decision as a group. But at this point, we have got here, and we're really at a good point. In the co-housing community, they say it's a good 6 years from finding the property to moving in, and or really securing the property and moving in. And we've got this property, it is owned. So let me tell you a little bit about how we're structured and where we go, and then we'll stop for questions. The founders of this group are not on our call tonight, but Meg and Josh, Josh Bloom and Meg Lemon, are a couple that decided to start talking to their friends and family about maybe doing something like this. That was 6, 7 years ago almost that they got started. And there's some kind of old historical documents I've seen where there were people who were interested and came maybe once or twice. And over time, they built up a small group, and it's continued to grow now. We have 15 households at this point, and a few more who are, I think, seriously giving us a look. So we're continuing to build on our momentum. But those folks that started out, they actually secured the land and closed on the deal in 2023. Now that it has been rezoned, it has appreciated dramatically. It was already, because of the plans in this area, because of the growth that's already taking place in residential development. And for those of you who are local, you're aware remember there's a hospital that just moved to about 3/4 of a mile from where our property is. And it's 4,000 employees. And what we expect to happen is kind of what's happened on the east side of our metropolitan community, right? Where the Anschutz Medical Center went up 20 years ago. And in the 20 years since, development has moved closer because there's a community of people that work there and want to live closer to their work, and the development has kind of reached them. We really think this is a great piece of land and a great place in the community for a whole lot of reasons. And then since rezoning it for our property plan, it is now that it is residentially zoned. I think all but the end of the parcel where the dog run and the gardens are, I think that actually is still zoned agricultural technically, but the front of the property is now approved for residential development. All of that means that our land has appreciated probably significantly. I hesitate to put a number on it, but I think it's at least doubled in value to be fair. And what that means, that's important for us because that is how we structure this plan. Where we go next, like I said, is really it's in process. We have raised enough funds from the members that we have on board already to fund the next 4 to 6 months of work that gets done to position us to be ready to break ground by this summer, if we have recruited the families to do that. There will be some additional costs, like right now, there are a couple of small homes, small houses that are abandoned and in disrepair on the property. They will need to be demolished. We know there's some asbestos in one of the properties, and there will need to be some remediation work done. And so there are still costs to be borne before we get to that point where we could break ground if all the circumstances are right. But those are coming along with every new member. We get an infusion into our treasury, and we've got the work pretty well funded, I think, at this point, or pretty close to. So what does that mean? It means that we need members to make it happen. Everything will be in place by this summer if we are in place. So what the work that we are doing as members, besides all the work that our team is doing and having these kind of informational sessions, is really two things: recruiting families and households to come join us, and building our community, our sense of community. We're just beginning now. I mentioned earlier to folks who were on that we are going to get some facilitated help at the end of this month and starting to flesh out our mission and values and how we describe them and how we wish to operate as a community. We're just beginning that work. So this is the time to join and help us shape that, because I like to think we're going to create a personality, a culture in our community, whether we do it intentionally or not. We're going to grow a culture if we don't grow it deliberately, right? So we are just beginning the work of making sure we do that we flesh out the philosophies and guidelines and things, the rules that we want to live by in this community, and the things that we'd like to see happen. So we're looking for more households to come in and help us make it happen, because it really could happen this year. What does it take for you to join? Right now, well, let me explain. We have a reservation agreement, and it gets back to how this land was purchased. The founders smartly set up two different LLCs. There is a land ownership group, and there were a few of them that paid the costs and continue to pay the costs of taxes on the land and whatever maintenance has to be done. Some minimal costs like that have been incurred along the way. They purchased the agreement, and their LLC charter says, or this land, and it says that it's specifically for the purpose of becoming the site of Blue Columbine Cohousing LLC, which is us, all of us who are members and those who join. When we get to the point of breaking ground and securing the construction loan, the landowning LLC will dissolve into Blue Columbine, and the original folks who purchased that land have agreed to a capped profit of 5%. So they have a capped profit. We know that the land has appreciated significantly more than they will benefit from, but their intent in purchasing the land was for the benefit of the community. So what that does is it protects us a lot for the money that we're investing to get to this point, and it's our fail-safe. So that when you sign an agreement to join Blue Columbine, what you sign is called a reservation agreement. And the reservation agreement means you're reserving a home in this community. So at the time when they become available for sale, you're in line to get one. And whatever number you are when you join, the next one I think will be number 15 or 16. I tend to get a little confused. They will be 16th in line, right, to choose their unit. So it works like that. If somebody falls out of the project, and we've had a few that have done this, folks who, it's been 3 years and their family has had some new developments or something and they need to move away and this isn't going to work for them anymore. When you sign that reservation agreement, it says if you drop out of the project, you will be repaid when the last unit is sold. So the community comes to life, we sell the units, we have now a treasury for Blue Columbine, and we reimburse anybody who had invested to get us to that point but has since dropped out of the project. The other time, if we decide that the project is not going to go forward, that's the other scenario that could happen. If we get to June or July or whatever the members decide this year and say, we've got everything ready, but we've only recruited X amount of families and we're exhausted and we don't see whatever happens. If we decide not to move forward on this project for some reason, then the agreement says the land is sold and those who have put money into the community are reimbursed through the sale of the land. That's really protecting us a lot, that structure, because we know the land has appreciated so much. It's certainly worth more than the total of what all of us have put in. So it's a smart way to, I'll say it wasn't my idea, but it was a very smart way to structure this so that we are because we are future residents and investors at this point. Once we have the construction loan and a builder and we can break ground, the last 10 homes or so, they are up for regular sale, mortgage financing. We do want to set aside a couple of those. We've talked with Habitat for Humanity and there's some other options. So there will be at least a couple of those units that are set aside to be more affordable. But to get to that point, we need 29 households in. That's what we're calculating in terms of the equity we would bring and the commitment we would bring that the lenders and builders will need to see. So our reservation agreement says that it's evolved a little bit, and I'll tell you how it's structured and how it works. You sign the agreement, you say, I would like to be a member, and your deposit payment is $27,000. That is what all of us who are members now have put into Blue Columbine so far. And then it also says that we as a group will be deciding when we need more. The total commitment is like you're putting down a 20%, I think of it this way, like you're putting down a 20% down payment on your home in advance, right? It adds up to almost $180,000, what we're asking from each member. But if you are able to leverage that amount, we may not be paying that before we get to the point where we know how much farther we're going. In other words, I mentioned that all of the funds we've raised so far through members has been enough to finance our costs to this point. So what we have done is suspended our original idea to have a payment schedule to get to that 180,000 mark-ish. It's really like 175, something like that. We originally had a plan that we'd have regular payments to get to that amount that each member would make. We have not been calling for payments because we haven't needed to fund our progress. And so what has happened instead is we as a group, when we meet, we look at our expenses, we look at what we've brought in through membership contributions, and we decide if we need to make another call. At this point, I'll say I don't expect it to grow from 27,000 anytime very soon because we have got the next few months of work mostly funded. Well, and I expect we'll add a few households that will keep us progressing. So what does that mean? We're signing that we agree to commit to 177.5, I think is the total. If you join now, there are a few incentives built into the payment structure. So those of us who joined early get a little extra credit. You might get a few extra thousand, and it's kind of spelled out in there, credited. That money you put down now becomes credited to your purchase price at the end. So you're $1 for dollar getting your, the amount you contributed is credited toward the purchase of your home. But it's what we need to secure to show the builders and the lenders that we can make this community happen. So that's the way the agreement is working. I should have paid off my contribution, I think, by now if we'd stuck to the regular schedule, and I've got the same 27,000 that everybody else does in this project. So that's where we are. Join now, and you get a few incentives, a few extra $1,000 towards your purchase price, and you help us intentionally create the culture and the personality of this community and really shape our vision and mission and what we believe in as that work is just getting underway. So that was an awful lot. See, anybody got a first question?
That was an impressive job, Lisa. I mean, that was a lot of talking, and you certainly have the message down.
Thanks. Is anything on your mind or is it?
Well, a ton. I understand that you have a meeting coming up in a couple weeks in person at the library, so I suspect
Oh,
I will go there. But
yeah.
um, you buy in And the prices of the units haven't been determined yet? Is that what you're saying?
We are working from draft numbers.
Okay.
So I could give you the range. And actually, if you go online to our website, I always want to put in a plug for our website. Many communities kind of have a more of teasing approach to their PR, right? They give you a little information on the website. You have to get involved to get more. We don't have a professional on staff who handles information. That's us. So we put as much as possible on the website. There is a lot there. I really encourage you to spend some time if you're seriously considering joining us to really get to know what that all the information there. The FAQ sites are the FAQ page is fantastic.
Hmm.
Virtually every question that's ever come up at a meeting, we have tried to put on that FAQ. And there's actually a link to the 44th Avenue subdevelopment plan, so you can see exactly what improvements are going on in the neighborhood that the city is making. If you want to look at all that. And on I believe it's the community page is, oh, thank you for linking it, Eva, in the chat. There, you can see the floor plans of each of the units. And there's a document called Unit Overview that also spells out kind of the different square footages of each of the units that are available. I think we took down the one with the prices because we knew they were going to change. But I'll tell you, the range is roughly 500,000 for the lower cost units, all the way up to 1.4 million for the 3-bedroom flat, which is 2,000 square feet and gorgeous. It's the one that I'm thinking I might take a housemate so I could just live there.
Lisa, the
And then
draft
there,
pricing is
yeah,
still in the
is
document.
it still there?
Mhm.
Okay.
It's in
So,
the
So
download one. Yeah.
yep.
yeah. And one thing about that is, again, we had about the best person we could draw up that budget for us, anticipating, and it was written in 2020 when it was already clear that construction prices were crazy. They were even crazier back then, actually. The supply lines, if you remember, COVID disrupted everything, and so it was written at a good time, and Jim knew what he was doing to draw it out for the point we would be at now figuring some markup. So we like to believe his numbers are a good indicator. That said, we know from our team that construction costs specifically have continued to grow, and they have been leveling off in the last year or two, actually, but they really spiked during COVID, and they never came all the way back down. So we expect there might be some increase to those prices. We're hoping it's minimal, all of us, because that's what we're working from. But those numbers, again, kind of what we need our team to do is translate all the plans into the exact, square footages down to the inches, because that's where the pricing will come from. The builders will tell us what it'll take. So we have about the best estimate we can to work from. And we're hoping to keep it pretty darn close. And the way we've been doing it again means there's no developer market in that. If what that also means, just so that people understand this, without the developer market markup, we probably move in with equity immediately because typically if we were setting it at market rate, it would reflect a markup from a developer that we won't have. So other co-housers we've talked to who live in other communities are like, oh wow, that you're going to move in and and have an equity right away. We really I made the comment months and well a couple of years ago, I think, meeting with the team. Oh, this means that we're getting it kind of at market rate and it's not a markup. And oh no, we're below market rate for the property itself. But it's still, all housing. What we're not doing is solving the affordability problem in housing, unfortunately.
Mhm.
You will get more bang for your buck with all the shared amenities. And when you look at that unit overview, you can see there's probably 50% more square footage devoted to like shared amenities than there are to even all our individual units. So that's part of what you are getting when you buy in, right?
Right.
Okay. So good, no questions, right? Yeah. Well, if there are no other questions, I'm happy to let you all go and enjoy your evening and suggest that you do, if you're seriously wanting to follow our progress and consider joining, know that we do meet with folks. We'll meet one-on-one. We have set up some dates, and in February, we're going to begin doing some more casual coffee type get-together so we can get to know each other more personally. You can meet some of our local members, and just to have a more casual environment to answer questions in. We'll also be launching something that's a little more formal too, to kind of be able to handle, I think, our influx of folks. But get to know us, come to the events and check out that website. And feel free to reach out because anytime you want to meet more. And if you're gung-ho like the Sullivans, you might hang up and just immediately reach out and say, let's get together and talk about an agreement and then and be members next weekend. That would be great. Well, thank you all for coming tonight. And don't
Thank you
forget
very
to,
much.
yeah, have a good one.
Thank you.
Good to see you.